Well, we're back up here in the practice pen trying to stave off this quarantine boredom. We've got another drill to share with you. This one is to help with a little bit more of the physicality of barrel racing. You know, if you were going to run a marathon, you would have to start slow and build up to that. Well, it's the same with our horses, but not just our horses, ourselves. There's a lot of this that we do on these horses that it also requires some skill in the saddle, and that skill requires some strength in the saddle. And so some of the purpose of these drills is not only are you helping with your horse, but you're helping yourself to learn to develop that skill in the saddle and develop a bit of a feel for this. You know, it's not just happenstance anymore. You can't just throw them the reins and hope for the best. There's too much money on the line. So we want to show you how to become a better rider and get more in sync with your horse so that you can begin to shave off those few precious tenths to get down into that D division that is your ultimate goal. So we will be right back with another drill.
Okay, now the point is to get in there on that tire close enough to where the horse and the rider actually have to work as soon as the dog gets out of the way. It's Charlie's Snow. So now you can see she's trying to do this one-handed because you're going to be turning a barrel one-handed. And so when she struggles, she'll just kind of get outside of that a little bit. Kind of, you could go back and get your cadence good on the outside of the circle and then drop down in there and really make them turn tight so that they're getting that core, their core strengthened. And the rider is getting their core strengthened as well. I mean, this is very physical, horse and rider. So don't start off with 10 minutes of it if you've not done it before. Kind of start off with just a little bit and kind of build it up through the days that you do this. Very good.
Well, this is my mom on Chrome. He's a 5-year-old gelding that we have in for training for Karen and Jason Barons. I had Chrome back when he was 2 and early 3 and got him started on the barrels. And then he went home and they've just been roping on him and doing a little bit of barrels and sending back to get him a little more polished and finished out. The trouble that we've had with Chrome is that he doesn't want to keep pushing on his feet. He's just a little bit lazy. And so this drill really makes him stay up and keep pushing on his feet and stay engaged in that turn. And we just really wanted to show you a little bit of a different horse that maybe it's a little bit of a struggle, not quite as easy. I have the poles laying there to kind of force my horses to stay in a circle. I stepped them off from that tire in the middle, and it's about 6 of my steps to each pole. So I'm going to say roughly about a 30-foot circumference of this circle. You don't want to make it too little, but you also don't want to make it too big, because the point of this exercise is for those horses to get in there and have to work. And also it's something that you can do for, you know, a minute or two, and then you're going to have to stop and let them take a breath, because they are having to really work to stay in that circle and keep going, and they'll get tired pretty quick. So that's another good example of another horse. And you can see it also makes the rider have to work a little bit. So not only are you building physicality in the horse, but the rider as well. I read a quote one time from Cassie Mowry that said, "You're either always training or untraining your horse." And I really believe that to be true. We're always either asking these horses to be engaged in what we're doing with them, or we're just letting them have free rein. And really the reality is they always need to be engaged with us in what we're doing. And that creates a response in these horses. And so one of the things in barrel racing that seems to be a little bit of a stigma is that we don't really get our horses broke enough. And for me personally, and a lot of the girls that I know, that's really not the case. We spend a lot of time really getting these horses really broke. And so I I don't know, there's a part of me that kind of thinks for a horse to be able to know how to go forward correctly, they also need to be able to go backwards correctly. And so while I don't necessarily put a big, huge calf horse reining stop on my horses, I do want them to have a really good, easy stop on them. I don't want them to use their front end as their brake. I want them to engage in their hindquarters and get their haunches up under them to stop. And so another part of that is to get these horses backing up using their hindquarters. And I just wanted to show you a little bit of what I do, because I have a lot of horses that when you touch their face, they'll just duck their head and run backwards, but they're not really engaged in moving their body backwards. They're kind of being a little lazy about it, and so I don't let my horses back up in that way. If I'm asking them to back up, then I want them to be engaged in that movement of backing up. And so one way I do that is I don't just back them straight up. I want to have total control of my horse's body. I want my hands connected to their feet. So I want their feet to follow where my hands go, and then I use my feet to move the back end of the horse. So if I want her to move her hip, then I use my foot back and I ask her to move her hip. If I want her to move her whole body, then I'll squeeze right in the girt area and pick up my rein and ask her to move laterally in that side pass. And I want her to be efficient at this both ways. And sometimes you'll figure out where your horse's tight place is by how well they can side pass right there. The other thing is, when I'm asking Bixby to back up, I don't want her to just duck her head and shuffle her feet. I want her to get on her haunches and push backwards with moving her front end. So I'm going to, while I have pressure on the face, I'm going to squeeze a little bit with my legs to lift this rib cage and back up and make her back up where her body is in a rounded position. The other thing that I will do when I ask my horses to back up is I won't just back them straight. I want my horses to learn to move away from pressure. So when I back up, if I put pressure on the inside rein and I have pressure on my outside foot to hold her hip in, then I want her to back up and arc away from me. So I'm going to put pressure on my inside rein, hold pressure with my outside foot, and I want her to move her front end out of this circle and her back end into the circle. Now I'm going to ask her to move her front end into the circle and the back end out of the circle. So I'm still going to keep her nose tipped this way, and I'm going to use my outside foot up by the girt and back her in a circle where I'm asking her to move her front end out of the circle. So we have move her front end into the backup circle. And ask her to put her haunches in. Back up. And what that's doing is that's teaching her to shift that weight to that outside hip and keep that hip up under her and use her front feet to get the motion that I want. So then we're going to back up into the circle. Now there's a tip to this. If you engage your horse in the bridle and you feel them sink back and lock up on you, do not engage your horse when they take that position. Don't jerk on their face. Don't start fighting with them, because that gets to be a very dangerous position for you to be in. If you feel that resistance, then immediately just ask them to move their feet. It doesn't matter, even if it's forward. Don't keep fighting with them trying to ask them to back up, because they will, if they feel like they're in a bind, their out might be that they wear up and fall over on you. And we do not want that to happen. So with this drill, exercise a little bit of caution, because when you first start doing this, you may get some resistance from your horse, and I don't want anybody to get hurt. And so if you pull back and you feel that resistance or that lock up, then immediately disengage and ask them to move, whether it's sideways or forward. But don't engage your horse if they're locked up and won't back up. One of the things that I do to kind of get them out of that is I just start asking them to move their feet, whether it's into this side pass or whether I just push them back forward a few steps and stop them and bump that. And if I get one step, then I let that pressure go until they learn what I'm asking them to do. You might just get one step. Sometimes when you start off, you might just get barely a little bit, but start with the reward, because that's really where horses learn. They don't learn from necessarily that constant pressure, they learn from that release. And so learn to be quick with your release on these horses. When they do what you ask them to do, then learn to release them as a reward, and eventually you'll find that they'll get softer and more willing to cooperate with you. But if you get up here and you start jerking on that face and pick a fight with them over trying to back up, you might get yourself in a really big storm. So just learn that art of release. If there's resistance, then just learn, if I get one step, then I'll start there. Then I'll ask for one more step. And I'll keep working on that until I get 5 or 6 steps in a row. And then if it's been a fight, I'll quit there for the day. I won't ask them to do any more than that. Sometimes if it's been a really big fight, if I get 1 or 2 steps, I'll be done for the day. But ultimately, I want my horses to where I can ask them to back up, and I can back them up, asking them to move in these circles, move their hip in, front end out, or move their front end in and hip out. One of the things that you might find in doing this is where your horse's tight places are. And so you might need to make a visit to your chiropractor or osteopath to get them a little bit loosened up and adjusted. But to me, what it's teaching these horses is body control and to listen to me. And so it's something that I do on all of my horses, not every day, but probably once or twice a week. I'll touch base with them backing up, find out if they have any tight places that need to be worked on, and we'll work on it. So this is yet another drill that you can put in your little toolbox of drills that we're giving to you to help you and your horse become better partners. Okay, can we just be honest for a second? I'm not getting any younger. One of the things that I have noticed of not getting any younger is that you begin to start to lose a little bit of strength in your body. I've always been pretty naturally strong. I played basketball when I was in high school, and just from being active and riding horses, I've always tended to be a little naturally strong. But I've had a few injuries over the years that have caused a little bit of weakness in my body, and I started noticing some changes in my horses that I really wasn't liking. And so I really started looking for reasons why I was getting those changes. And so I kind of began to pay attention to how I was sitting in the saddle and riding my horses. And one of the things that I noticed that I was doing is I was standing on my toe and kind of leaning forward in the saddle to get to a place where I could feel a little bit stronger in the saddle, especially like going into that turn. I noticed that I would kind of want to tip forward and kind of take this little bit of a braced stance in the saddle, because there is some science that is involved in barrel racing, and one of those is centrifugal force. And so when those horses, especially those really top horses that we all like to try to ride, when those horses make those turns, buddy, they are putting some force on you as the rider. And so you have to learn how to kind of counter that force in your body to be able to stay with that horse when they make that turn. And sometimes that gets to be the difference between why you'll see people be 1D riders and people that struggle to be 1D riders, is how they handle that centrifugal force of that turn in their body. I think horse trainers by nature are just going to be a little bit stronger in their body because they ride so many horses, and we do this as a living versus people who work an office job and sit behind a desk all day and only ride their horse maybe 2 or 3 times a week. They might struggle a little bit more to have that strength in the saddle that they need. And so I started really paying attention to where I was carrying my weight and my strength in the saddle, just even trotting and loping circles on these horses. And so that one thing that I noticed is that I was kind of wanting to balance on the toe of my inside foot when I was going in a circle, instead of shifting that weight to have my outside leg push down in that heel and supporting that horse's outside of that body so that they can move to the inside direction. See, we're always teaching these horses, move away from pressure, move away from pressure. Well, if I'm wanting Bixby to go to the left and I tip forward and I have weight in this stirrup and I'm pushing here, but I'm wanting her to go this way, well, her only recourse is to kind of fall into that move, and by doing so, I'm losing her hip out of the turn. She's not able to rate the turn in an effective manner, and so it makes her kind of drop into that turn and blow out on the back side of the turn. So I really want to pay attention to how I sit in my saddle. If I want Bixby to go to this left direction, then I'm going to shift my weight to this right side. And I know when I'm doing that because I think about pushing down on my heel right here. And so then I'm in this position in the saddle. I have weight here. I can squeeze with this leg, even though I have some pressure on it. I can still squeeze with this leg, but you'll notice my inside leg is out away from her. So the outside leg is a closed door. The inside leg is an open door. I can tuck my leg in there and put a little pressure in that rib cage to keep a little bit of shape, but I also get that off of using my inside rein. I've taught her how to hold shape around that inside rein in my practice and my dry work. And so now when I want Bixby to go to the left, kind of like skiing, I'm sure a lot of y'all have been skiing, I'm squared up in the saddle. I'm going to shift my weight and drop my weight into this outside heel and push her off to the left. Now you could see right there, my inside rein wasn't engaged much at all. She was moving strictly off of my outside leg pressure, pushing her into that circle right there. So we just wanted to share that little tidbit with you because it's something that we see a lot, and people kind of want to tip over and start that turn too soon, and then those horses really struggle on the backside, and they're kind of wondering why that's happening, and they want a different bit or a different this or a different that. And sometimes it's just that you as the rider, you need to work your core and really pay attention to where you're carrying your weight in your saddle going into those turns, and even just in your ride around on your horses.
We're just so glad that you've been with us. We've covered quite a bit, and the beauty of stepping out and the 6-barrel exercise and the, tightening down on that turn and really making those horses push on their feet and drive through that turn, and your ability to stay with them. I always say that if the rider's weight made a difference, there should be no man ever win a barrel race. And so really it's not about weight so much as it is about balanced weight. If I'm rolling around and my hands are going everywhere and I'm just, like this in the saddle, trying to turn the barrel, you know, like this, well, I'm not giving good information, good, viable information. And so one thing the Step Out does is it gives good quality information to your horse, and the training is so that you and your horse can trade that information. You know, like when I was going around the tire, he is giving me information that he needs more conditioning. He needs to be stronger. I was also getting that idea that I need to be stronger because we struggled to do it. And so instead of, you know, having the blame game and, you know, that's really not where it's at. It's about trading that information. The Step Out really can help that so that you and your horse are like on the same page. Teamwork. Teamwork, got this from Coy Huffman, makes the dream work. Well, you know, I've taught stepping out for all these many years. I believe it's one of the most overlooked riding skills that we have is, you know, moving your weight in the saddle to where you are balanced with your horse. And so we hope that you enjoyed this, and you know, be sure you like us, but also punch the subscribe button so you'll be getting notifications on when we're doing our videos, and you'll be able to keep up with us. Thanks.